Good afternoon, everyone. Want to welcome everyone to the March 1st meeting, Rotary Club of Gainesville. So guests and visiting Rotarians, if you're joining us virtually on Zoom, please go ahead and identify yourself in the chat. And if you're watching on YouTube, we ask that you please register your participation by sending an email to info@rotary.org. Pete Inwall, please come forward.
First, I want to thank our technician over there. We were having trouble with the keyboard, and so we couldn't hear it. So we wondered about how to solve that problem, and we checked with our technician, and he said, we turn up the volume. So that's what he did. And for Dave Nichols, if you're back there, if you can't hear the punchline, let me know, because I know that you don't want to miss this. And a friend of mine bought some couple of watchdogs, and so he named them, one of them Rolex and the other one Timex. But he had to get rid of them because when the mailman brought the mail, they tended to run a little fast. Did you hear that, Dave? We're gonna sing "My Country 'Tis of Thee." Pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pete. At this time, we have Kevin Thorpe on Zoom for our invocation. Kevin?
May we pray. Lord, this is a great day. It is one that we have never seen before, and when it is past, we will never see again. Thank you for every assignment that brings us all together. We pray especially for this week as we prepare for our annual Wild Game Feast. We pray that it would be a great time of festivity, a great time of fellowship, and ultimately a great time of fundraising. We also celebrate today's presentation as we understand the union between what occurs at the Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences and how it relates to our local industries. Bless now what we do and what we say, the food that has been prepared for your sake and for your glory. Amen.
Thank you, Kevin. You may be seated. If we have any visiting Rotarians or Rotarians that have a guest, if you would remain standing and introduce yourself or your guest. Thank you, Eric. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you, Bob and Connie Crane from Iowa.
You're welcome.
Hello, Rotarians. My name is Bill Stasowitz, and on my right is Josh Gaynor, and he is a personal trainer at Ballatory Gym over on Main Street next to Chestnut Funeral Home. And next to me on my left is the owner of Ballatory Training, Ronald Ballatory. And in the month of March, he has a special that anybody that named Wilbur or Jason gets a special discount, and he assure you that he can put muscles on you, but I've already checked Jason, and he can't help us with the hair.
Well, welcome. We're so glad to have you with us. Okay, well, with it being the first of the month, we want to recognize Rotarians with birthdays. And the first birthday we want to recognize Gordon Hubble. We maybe recognize you. I believe your birthday was yesterday. Would you stand up and give a wave? We are so honored and blessed that you provide such wonderful music for us. And we appreciate you being there every week. I know I appreciate you. Okay, Rotarians with birthdays, we have a tradition of bringing $1 forward. So at this time, I'm going to go through the list. We have birthday cake in the back. Helen Warren, Monica Brasington, John Bruner, Frank Sayre, Pam Carpenter, John Jopling, Susan Crowley, Barbara Anderson, Frank Mason, Charlie Page, Eric Goday. Come on up. Thank you. Kurt Klein, Carl Baird, Victoria Watson, Ryan Thompson. TJ, where are you? You got a birthday this month. TJ Shea, John Kirkpatrick, Gabe Nosa, Tony Salzman, Colleen Keene, John Sherritt, and Elena Frazier. Happy birthday to all Rotarians.
So let us sing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, fellow Rotarians, especially Gordon. Happy birthday to you. And many more.
Thank you, Pete. Okay. Let's see. John Gregory, are you with us? I know you had a poem that you wanted to do for the Wild Game Feast. Oh,
Yes.
it's on Zoom. Okay.
I'm on Zoom. Yes.
All right. Well, we're going to turn the floor over to you then.
All right. This poem is called Wild Game Sausage. Greg Young got to the feast and ate first. The meat was fed till he burst. Frog legs and ducks and things that clucks, but the sausage was truly the worst. That's a you, not a, okay, anyway. When Shank got to the beer barn for a hit, Jason tries to leave a little bit fit. He surely will die, read Drink Canada Dry and proceeded to try to accomplish it. Eating wild game, you might dread, but listen to warnings from others instead. Don't be defeating, practice safe eating. Always use condiments or you'll feel you were dead. I'm a social drinker, Chad claimed while high. If he doesn't have a drink, he'll die. The feast makes you think. When somebody says, I'll have a drink, Chad will say with glee, so shall I. See you at the feast.
Thank you, John. That's a very appropriate introduction because the man of the hour here, Jay, come on up. Let's give him a round of applause. What an amazing job he and everyone have done preparing for just a couple of days away. I'm gonna let you take over.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Well, you know, it's coming up. Now, some of you may have read something in the paper this morning, and I just want to let you know that I worked really, 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 really hard on that particular letter to the editor, reviewing it, that is. I'm a little bit like Cyrano de Bergerac because the writer of that is my man, TJ Bechet. So let's give him a round of applause for making me look that good. I got compliments as I was walking in the door. My head got real big until they finally said, you know, it's about that letter that was in the paper this morning. So appreciate you making me look good, TJ. So first of all, I want to thank all the volunteers that have been out there over the last several weeks. The site looks amazing. And we've had such great turnout, not only on the Rotarians, but all of the organizations that we're taking care of and that they're going to receive the benefits of this feast have all been out there. And so it's been amazing. That's the Games for Opportunity Center, the Child Advocacy Center, and then the University of Florida. What am I trying to spit out? Mobile Outreach Clinic is what I'm trying to say. I am completely brain dead. So you got to give me a little bit of a break here. So anyways, we're looking forward to Thursday. It's going to be an amazing, amazing day. Erica Day has, is going to have it's a chamber type of day. It's going to be perfect weather out there. So we're lucky that we're having that. Speaking of volunteers, want to make sure that you all know that we do need volunteers the day of the feast. So anybody that's in here that can help, we certainly are looking for help. We are getting a lot of turnout from the recipients. They're helping us out in a lot of ways. But anything that you all can do to help us would be absolutely fantastic. And if you are coming out early, make sure that you bring your ticket. So all Rotarians, should bring a ticket when you go out there. So make sure you do that. We also want to talk a little bit about the raffle. So the raffle is something that the Southeast Car Agency has sponsored for us. And we've sold a lot of tickets, but it's not like the usual days or usual years in that these meetings have been a little bit less attended than normal. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that everybody out there buys a ticket. You can't win if you don't enter. And then we want to make sure that the Zoomers out there, we're going to make a special challenge to the Zoomers that they go ahead and purchase some raffle tickets. So you can make a phone call to Wes, can email, we can get you some tickets. So we want to make sure you do that. So with that, this Thursday is going to be an amazing day. And it's been truly my honor to get to this point. I know I'm going to be extremely happy when Friday morning comes around. But you all have made this absolutely amazing and easy for me. And I really do appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. The sponsorships have been absolutely amazing. We've blown it out of the park. Everybody's buying tickets, which is amazing. And if you haven't bought a ticket, buy one. Every Rotarian should buy one. Buy a ticket, buy a raffle ticket, and you're in the game. So with that, can't wait to see you on Thursday. It's going to be an amazing evening. And if there's anything that you need, anything that you would like to have help with, you have any questions, any concerns, and again, please volunteer if you can. We'd love to have you out there volunteering. With that, looking forward to seeing you on Thursday. Thanks for everything that you do. Yeah.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you for everything that you do. All right, at this time, I am going to go ahead and turn our program over to our president, David Gracie.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's wonderful to see everyone here again in our temporary venue that I think is working out very nicely for us. Thank you, Stephanie and Jenna, and everyone else from the CADE. I don't know if Amanda's here right now, but I recognized her last week. But again, the CADE has done so much to help this transition, and I think we've got a great temporary venue here. A couple of things I want to mention before we get along with our program. We've got a wonderful program today, but first I want to be sure to thank Melanie for the wonderful job she does up here as Sergeant at Arms, and that includes a lot more than just running through the pre-meeting business items, but doing some things like recognizing Gordon Hubble. Gordon is someone that ideally we wanted to have another pianist actually play for Gordon. That would have been appropriate. Gordon's been playing for all of us for longer than I've been in the club, but unfortunately, the couple of pianists that I know in the club just weren't able to do it today. But Melanie, thanks for your thoughtfulness with Gordon and for doing the cake again and all you do to help me recognize everyone that deserves recognition. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And boy, Jay, appropriately, we should really thank you once the feast is finished, because we certainly are a long way from being finished. Right, there you are. Jay's back there working, still selling tickets. But I'm telling you, Jay has just done a phenomenal job. He's a wonderful leader. He just has that kind of authentic personality that people want to rally behind, and that's why we've done so well with sponsorships. We've done so well with the Saturday work parties, work fellowships. And again, I'll mention, as I did last week, we are so close to just having a wonderful feast. So I'm asking everyone now to please show up and enjoy it. And also, if you're so inclined, please help us out and do some work out there. Jay, you did a great job with the weather. That's the hardest thing for Feast Master. I remember a few years ago, it's hard to predict the weather, but boy, Jay has done a great job there. We're going to have a beautiful day Thursday. So I look forward to seeing everyone out there Thursday, folks. We're going to have a wonderful feast, and we want to have a nice, safe one. Without further ado, I'm going to ask our director and programs chair extraordinaire. Oh, come on, Eric. Eric Godet has done such a wonderful job with programs, and boy, we've got a good one today. Please welcome Eric.
Thank you, President David. This is truly an honor, and we have an incredible committee, and that's the value of the work. And we're just excited to go forward. Jay's put in his order for a Chamber Day for Thursday quite some time ago, so I think he's going to be all set. If not, I will hear from him. Okay, so today I'm extremely excited that we have Dr. Scott Engel. And in this introduction for Dr. Scott Engel, see, I thought I was going to have this opportunity because Susan on our committee, you know, she prioritizes all the UF folks for herself. And so, hey, I got to slip in here. And so I feel really privileged. So Dr. Scott Engel is the new-ish Senior Vice President for Agriculture and Natural Resources and Administrative Head for the UF Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences. He comes to us from Washington, D.C., where he had been the director of the United States Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture. And now the global reach of UF IFAS positions Dr. Engel as a leader in efforts to feed world population expected to reach 10 billion by the year 2050. Dr. Engel thinks globally, but he acts locally. He has already met with the city, the county, and nonprofit officials about how UF IFAS can contribute to the local efforts to combat hunger and find solutions for food deserts. Dr. Engel has witnessed global food insecurity firsthand during a career that has taken him to nearly 100 countries. As president and CEO of the International Fertilizer Development Center, he oversaw the efforts to increase food production through the proper use of fertilizer to help millions of small farmers out of poverty and even famine. His talk today will outline his vision for how to feed a growing planet while using fewer resources to do it. Please, let's give a warm Rotary welcome to Dr. Scott Engel.
Well, thank you and good afternoon. It's really a pleasure to be with you. I love the work of the Rotary, love Rotarians. I think it's very well aligned with the work of IFAS. And one of the things I plan to do over the next few minutes is to weave in some of your goals and your aspirations and where the organization sees itself fitting into a global community, and how IFAS and the University of Florida can be a part of that. So I've been around a long time. I started my career as a soil scientist. I worked in the Chesapeake Bay region, helping farmers adapt to the new environmental reality. Chesapeake Bay at the time was quite polluted. Some of that pollution was coming from farmers, and so farming had to change in such a way that it would no longer be a significant source of the problems that were occurring. The oysters, the crabs, the clams had all mostly disappeared back in the 1970s and 1980s. And fast forward here to Florida, we find that many of the same issues that I found in Maryland are here now. We're having that same discussion. Is it the farmers? Is it 22 million people, almost 23 million people, failing septic tanks, fertilizers applied to the land? The answer is all of us are part of the problem, and all of us are part of the solution. But from there, I then went to, unfortunately, I spent kind of lost track of myself, spent 10 years at the University of Georgia as a Dean of Agriculture there. So I got to know a lot of, but actually South Georgia was in many ways very similar to North Florida. So I got to learn a lot of the agriculture in this area at the time. From there, I lived and worked in Africa for 3 years, again, running IFDC, where we had headquarters in Nairobi and Accra, Ghana, but we had 22 other offices around the continent. So I mostly spent my time on a plane. I probably slept 2 nights a week on a plane, either flying to Africa from Muscle Shoals, Alabama, which was the main headquarters, to the continent, or within a continent once I got there. Spent a couple of years at the USDA, NIFA, the National Institute of Food and Ag, which is kind of the National Science Foundation equivalent for agriculture. And then I was very happy to be able to move from DC. It was a contentious time there. You can imagine what it was like. I moved the agency that I worked for from Washington, DC to Kansas City. Not a particularly popular move, but it was a political reality of what I was asked to do. So made for a fascinating job. But when I learned that the position here was open, I've known my predecessor, Jack Bain, for probably decades now, and he had called me and said, "Hey, I'm leaving. Would you be interested in applying?" I was, because I've always known about the work of IFAS. I've always very much appreciated what it did. I said this during my interview. I thought it 20 years ago, and I still believe it after being in IFAS now. I think this is the #1 program of agriculture and natural resources, forestry, fisheries, anywhere in the country. And I say that for one reason. The U.S. News and World Reports ranks universities. It ranks agriculture programs, and it ranks as #1, University of California at Davis. But when you go to a farmer in California and you ask them, "What do you know about Cal Davis?" They don't have any response. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they do. They don't know about extension. They don't know about the research support for their farming operations. It's just a non-existent entity to them. But if you go to a farmer here in Florida, or a natural resources manager, or a 4-H'er in many of our urban areas, they know exactly what IFAS is, and they know exactly what it does. And so on one hand, IFAS is very responsive to the needs of the state. They obviously pay our salaries, so that's important. But they are responsive to the needs of the farming, the families, the new businesses. On the other hand, it's also a big enough organization that still does some pretty good basic research, that long-term, futuristic. Sometimes it gets criticized as being a bit ivory tower-ish, but that type of research that will help growers, families 20 years from now. IFAS is the only organization in the country that can do both. And so I rank IFAS as the #1 agricultural natural resources program in the country, even though U.S. News and World Report doesn't seem to be able to get that right. So from having moved to Florida, one of the things I knew about Florida and knew about IFAS is simply the gravitas of the organization. It's all over the states, in every county of the state, 12 research centers. And some of these research centers are bigger than community colleges around the state. We've got a couple other specialty research centers, one on potatoes, one on mosquitoes, one on citrus. We have 3 4-H camps, overnight 4-H camps, where you're young adults. 4-H, by the way, is the youngest youth development program in the state. And as I said, we are in every county of Florida, so 67 offices. And some counties like Palm Beach have more than 1 office. So it's an incredible organization with some outstanding faculty, staff, and outstanding students. One of the things that also attracted me to IFAS was its international reach. It works literally all over the globe. It's tended to focus in the Caribbean, Latin America, South America, a little bit in Africa, not so much in Europe, Australia, Asia, Southeast Asia, but it's had a tremendous impact around the world. And a lot of the agricultural technologies that are feeding people today came directly from work that was done here in Gainesville or other places within IFAS around the state. So given my global background, having lived in Africa for a while and having spent much of my career trying to promote these programs, particularly through the U.S. Agency for International Development, I found that this was just the perfect match for me. And as a result, I'm just really blessed to have it work out and end up being here. This is So for all the jobs I've had, I will tell you, this is the best job I've ever had in my career, and the one that I think can have the most impact globally and locally. So for all the good work that is done in IFAS and other similar organizations, we still need to produce more food. 70%, maybe even 100% more food needs to be grown on this planet by the year 2050. I think Rotarians know that as well as anyone in the world. But we don't have any more land. In fact, we're going to have less land in the future. We're going to be taking land out of production in Brazil and putting it back into tropical rainforest for carbon sequestration. We're going to have growing urban populations. And unfortunately, urban populations, when they grow, they always grow into the most valuable agricultural land, the most productive agricultural land. So we're going to have less land in the future. And we're going to have less water. There's only a finite amount of water. That water goes first to city, urban uses. Agriculture gets kind of what is left over. You see that in California right now. We're making sure that the cities have enough water for drinking and industrial purposes. But farmers in California are starting to go out of business. So here is our conundrum that we have globally. We've got to, let's say, produce 80% more food by the year 2050. And that's, by the way, not just because there'll be more people, 10 billion. Some people are now even predicting up to potentially 12 billion people on this planet. But the first thing you do when you move out of poverty is you want better food. So I lived and I worked in communities where people were truly hungry. You went to bed hungry. That's the kind of definition of extreme poverty, is when you go to bed that night and you don't feel like you had enough nutrition that day. You're probably eating beans and rice and maybe some maize. You probably have no meat or very little meat, very little dairy in your diet, probably not many fruits and vegetables either. But the first thing that happens when you start to move out of poverty is you have all kinds of needs. By the way, you've all heard the saying, you know, when you're hungry, you only have one problem, and that's getting more food. When you're well fed, we all have lots of problems in our lives, but a hungry person only has one. But once you move out of that area of poverty, and let's say you now have a couple dollars because you're selling a little bit of your excess food that you produced on your half acre of land into the local market, you can send your oldest child to school, or you can buy some health care for your children, or you can buy better food. And the first thing that people living who are with hunger, first thing you do is you buy more food, and you buy a little bit of meat to put in your diet. You buy some dairy, maybe a little bit of processed food that is nutritionally more complex, more fruits and vegetables. And that then becomes the first step out of poverty, because when you are hungry, when you spend most of your life going to bed hungry, but particularly in the first 1,000 days, there's a wonderful book called The First 1,000 Days. And it describes in a uniquely simple goal for humanity, but one that we unfortunately just don't seem to be able to achieve. And that is, if in your first 1,000 days, if you can have enough protein and nutrients in your diet, then you can go from being stunted or runted, which means that you have both reduced physical and mental capacity for the rest of your life that can't be overcome, to then having a healthy child who is much more resistant to disease, but also then will develop physically and mentally so that they can become good members of society. And it may take one egg a day, or it may take a cup of milk a day, things that we just can't fathom. How can you not have an egg a day? But much of the world still lives, about 20% of the world. It's actually a little less than that. It's probably about 15. The number is going down, which is the good news. But still about 15% of the population doesn't have that egg, doesn't have that protein coming from dairy or meat. So they are, in that case, stunted physically and mentally, and they cannot move their country forward. So what we've been involved with IFAS for a long, long time is helping farmers to grow more food. And not that they're going to eat all that food themselves, because that's not the goal here. The goal is to produce enough food to feed your family, number one, but then have something left over so that you can go into the market on the weekend, most likely, and sell that. And that's where you get that $2 a week, $3 a week, and to be able to buy an egg for each child every morning, or get some health care, or send the oldest boy to school. who then can come back to the village or maybe go off to work in a larger city and send money back to the parents. That's truly the first step of dire poverty, is making sure that you are not so hungry that you can't develop properly. It's very sad, because once you get beyond that first 1,000 days, you can then have more meat and more dairy and more protein in your diet, and it doesn't make that much difference anymore. It's when those young people are first developing that this is so critical. So we need to produce a lot more food. It's not going to happen over much of the world. This is where IFAS becomes absolutely critical. I mentioned California earlier. My father-in-law is a citrus grower in California. This year, he has pushed down half of his citrus trees because he only has enough water. He has to double up his water rights from this area over here onto where he still has half of his trees left to grow them. But as I was in California about a week and a half ago, seeing him, and as I drove up the Central Valley, it was just field after field that was fallow. Nothing is being grown. And even though it may be raining this weekend in California, they expect one of those torrential storms to come through in the weekend. That when it comes that fast, it just runs off into the river and it never recharges the groundwater, which is where the irrigation water comes from. It's also too cold, by the way, in the north. So you can't grow, if you get much above Missouri, you can't grow a whole lot more food. You can't have multiple croppings per year. You don't have enough sunlight. The days are too short during much of the year. So growing more food really comes down in the United States to the Southeast and Florida because of its unique character. We have good soil, reasonably good soils. We have a lot of water, obviously, and we have the ability to grow more food. So we have become a very important part of the global food solution. By the way, we're not going to grow more food in Europe because they're going all organic, which is certainly that's fine. For communities and countries that can afford that, we can't feed the world growing all of our food organically. Australia, India, China, they are mostly desert. They can't grow more food. South America probably can grow some more, but as I said earlier, we're taking land out of Brazil right now out of production, putting it back into rainforest for climate change reasons. So it very much comes down to North America. I've already cut out the northern half of the US and Canada, or taken out the western part. It is this state, this region that are a big part of the future. And if we don't grow more food, and if we don't export that food to the people who need it, we live and work in a global market now. We are going to have more hungry people. And as I saw firsthand in a number of countries, both in Asia and in Africa, when people are hungry, that's when bad things start to happen. That's the root of terrorism. When you're desperate, when you're hungry, you have nothing to lose. And so why not join a terrorist organization? Because that appears to be a path forward. Or crime, or corruption. All of these things that we don't want to promote begin with the basis of hunger. And so it's not just the fact that, hey, we can sell this food to people and it's a good business for Florida. It's that it is going to be paid back in a more civil society globally. And that then becomes an advantage for all of us, because at that point, maybe you don't need as many warships in the Pacific, or as large of an army as a result of that, because we live in a more peaceful world. Unfortunately, we're a long way. Obviously, this week, we're a long way from that. And so we need those powerful organizations to protect us. But our goal someday is to have a more peaceful world. And that begins with making sure that everyone is well fed. So I think this is our obligation at IFAS, and it's one of the ways that I approach the job. Is it's a business for us. We're not giving away our food, we sell it, but it does become a way for us to assure that we do have a more civil society going forward. I think as Rotarians, it's also a mechanism for you to make a huge difference. And one of the things I wanted to come here today and was really appreciative of the invitation is I would like to find ways for IFAS to work with Rotary more. What can we do in working with you, with our global outreach, with our global capacity, and with our collective understanding that we are part of the solution for the future? How can we make sure that we are doing our part here in Gainesville to assure that other areas of the world that are less fortunate than us can have the same future that we all hope for ourselves? There are limitations. Here's another message I want to talk about today, and I'll be ending up with this. Sometimes it's not so easy. When you work for the University of Florida, I spend a lot of time in Tallahassee. I was there almost all last week. Our budgets are being put together. I'm kind of the, not allowed to say chief lobbyist for the universe for IFAS, but I'm the chief educator for legislators in Tallahassee. And so I was talking a lot about these same type of issues, both internally to Florida, but externally, globally as well. And this is a pushback I get. I and Chris Moran, who works in my office, and I suspect we have some other people in here who have worked for the University of Florida and maybe even IFAS. One of the pushbacks we get is, hey, we're paying your salary and we don't want you to be teaching farmers down in Brazil how to grow more soybeans, because then that just becomes competition for our own markets. And so we want, maybe in Brazil, oranges would be a better example. We want to make sure that our tax dollars are staying in the state to make sure that we are helping the producers and the businesses of Florida. And that's a very compelling argument, at least on the surface. Once you start to dig into that more deeply and think about global hunger and the fact that we're not giving away these foods to other places of the world, it actually is a business. And I think we all believe, and I know it's one of the tenets of Rotary, is that raising everyone's boat a little higher with the rising tide is good for everyone. Countries that are now healthier and happier and have a stronger economy become better markets for the things that we produce here in Florida. And so I really have to struggle when I talk to legislators to make sure that I explain this. We're not just giving Florida resources to some other country and building up their economies. There's actually a lot of benefit that comes back to this state. Not the least of which is the fact that when we are working overseas, there are great solutions for a lot of the problems that we have in Florida. When I started in school a long, long time ago, it was kind of America first, America only. I think it was an undeserved, in many ways, it was an arrogant philosophy, but the feeling was all the answers are found in the United States. So we don't need to go to Brazil or Africa or Asia or China, where there may be answers. But I think we have gotten to the point now where we understand that not all the answers are in the United States anymore. There are great answers to our problems here in Florida found in the rest of the world. So whether it's someone who comes as a student from Rwanda, comes to Florida, works on our problems, solves Florida's problems, and goes back home and solves their own problems, to someone who may stay here permanently, to funding from other countries that benefit Florida, to creating these markets. This is important for the University of Florida, and I think IFAS does it quite well. I think we're ahead of the curve. I would like to see other colleges and other units within the University of Florida do a little more of that, because I think that the more we can expand our gravitas into a global community, I think that is better, not just for Florida, not just for the University of Florida, but for the world. So we got our challenges cut out for us. These are not simple issues. If they were simple, we would have fixed them long ago. And I don't think we're going to fix them in the next, I don't think we're going to be quite where we need to be by the year 2050, but we are making progress. There was an economist, Malthus, lived almost 200 years ago. And what he said was that we will never be able to feed a growing population, that we will always have hunger, we will always have starvation, and the only way to prevent that from happening is by limiting growth in the human population. We haven't done a very good job of limiting growth of the population, but we have been able to keep up with the ability to produce enough food. We're right at the edge, and all it takes is a drought, bad weather, or revolution, corruption, and then people go hungry very quickly. But we do produce enough food on this planet. If we could just get 100% of it to 100% of the people who need it, we could solve our problems today. But we can't do that. We still waste a lot of food. We have shipping issues. There are all kinds of problems that prevent food from getting where it's produced to where it is needed. So we're very close, but we have in Florida an obligation, I think, to help support these global issues. And I'm just so glad to see that Rotary, and I've been with many Rotary groups, clubs around the country. You all have the same ethos. You all understand your role in a global society. And so I want to just thank you for doing that. And I want to offer up the fact that IFAS would love to be a partner with you in any ways that we can think about working with Rotary in the future. So thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Okay, we have a couple minutes for questions.
Thank you for coming today. I'm Stephanie Bales, and what great information you shared. One of the things that we're interested here at the Cade Museum, we talk about technology and the integration of technology. And, I've noticed, I've learned of companies, like there's a company in Orlando called Calera that does a lot of vertical farming. I understand that outside of, is it McClinney or something, there's been a large investment in hundreds of thousands of square feet that brings farming indoors and integrates AI into the process. How do you think that integration of technology, with existing kind of farming techniques will help us increase our productivity and distribution, et cetera?
Sure, that's a great question. Agriculture is changing faster than any time I've ever seen in my lifetime. We've had a number of successive waves of innovation, the tractors, mechanization, fertilizers, genetically modified crops. The fourth one is in information management. Obviously, artificial intelligence, which is a very important component of the future of the University of Florida. It's also a very important component of agriculture and IFAS, and we are heavily invested in that. But that's where the changes have occurred. It's really with data management. We've always had automation on farms. We've had automated apple pickers for 50 years now. There's machines that are able to go through an apple orchard and grab an apple and chuck it into a bin. The problem was it may grab it too tightly and squish it. It may not grab it tightly enough and it falls out. Was it ripe? Was it ready to be fixed? And so what it took was artificial intelligence that has just now, and literally within the last year or two, created a system where the artificial eye can look at that apple, is it ripe, and then decide how much pressure to put on it and get the apple off the tree into the right place. So it's changing agriculture, which couldn't come too soon because we're losing our labor in agriculture, by the way. These are hard jobs. And as economies, for instance, in Honduras and Mexico improve, more people are staying home. They came to the US for jobs. But as there are jobs in Mexico, there's no reason to come here. So we're losing our labor. Many of these immigration issues that we've been so worried about for decades now are kind of taking care of themselves in some way because of changing economies. So we're going to need to have robots. Robots are our future in agriculture. And without that, I don't see there being viable agriculture anywhere in the United States. You mentioned vertical agriculture. Yeah, that's an exciting opportunity. It's going to be for high-end food crops. So we're not going to grow corn and soybeans vertically in an indoor system. But the beauty of it is if it's high enough value, so some of the boutique lettuces, for example, and herbs that require a lot of care, they can be grown indoors. There's a roof on the building, so it's all artificial lighting, and we only use the wavelength of light that is important for plants. We don't waste all those other unnecessary wavelengths that we get from the sun. The water is controlled, so there's no release of water from the system. Water pollution then becomes a non-issue for this. Fertility is much more efficient. We can manage insects and diseases much more easily. So that's a big part of the future. It's going to be closely located to a big city because this has to be fresh. It has to be collected, has to be harvested in the same day it is consumed. That's part of the beauty of all of that type of integrated vertical system. But yes, it's coming. There's a system, the Villages is using it right now. We're in conversations to help some of these other large companies refine the systems that they have already developed.
Thank you. And kind of following up with what Stephanie had asked, You mentioned working in a lot of other countries in the world, but we know that here in this county and throughout the state and every state, there are pockets of residences that are way below on their daily nutrition. And I was wondering if there's action to help organize either the collection of foods from the grocery stores that may be getting thrown out, or an exciting process where you can be raising fish and plants with the circulation of the fish water to be the natural fertilizer for the plants. And one of my neighbors is doing that, and it's just an incredible process. And I wonder why it's not being carried out on a larger scale.
To answer your last question first, I don't know why. I've seen those systems all over the world too. And they generally, after a couple of years, get abandoned. So there's a reason for that. I don't know what that reason is. It could be disease. It could be just, they do require maintenance and upkeep, and people just get busy and lose interest. But that's been my experience, is that there's a lot of excitement early on because they do work well. It's a fabulous recycling system of the nutrients. So it makes all kinds of sense to be doing that. But there's something missing there. And we've got some researchers working on that, by the way. We support aquaculture research within Florida. And so that's been, including out here at Millhopper. So we've been looking at that for a while, trying to make sure that the efficiency is there. But again, there's a social issue associated with that I haven't quite grabbed a hold of yet. Going back to the local communities. So Field to Fork, that's primarily managed through IFAS. That takes the things that we grow within our land of IFAS and make sure that it gets to food pantries. We regularly sponsor elements for how we can help local production feed, provide more food for people locally. And by the way, on Thursday, it's our Food Systems Institute is sponsoring a Future of Food Forum, which will be at the Rights Union. And it's going to talk a lot about these local food issues. If any of you are interested in joining us, just go to the IFAS website and you'll be led to the Future of Food Forum. Yeah, there's plenty of hunger within our own community. And by the way, it's not the same type of hunger you see in Africa. It's not a lack of calories, it's a lack of nutrition. And so it's a different issue than what we would face in other countries, but it's still the same thing. By the way, we also manage through our extension service, the SNAP program, which is a federal program for providing food. Well, we're part of it, I shouldn't say we manage the whole thing, but we're part of the system for providing food to people locally.
Yes, thank you for coming. My name is Pete Enwall, and as you can tell, I'm glad to hear that we'll have enough food because I like to eat. You may already know this, but E.T. York was a longtime member of this club, and we sort of consider him to be one of the fathers of the modern IFAS program. And so I would invite you to join us. And but my question is this: there's an ongoing tension between those that want to use less fertilizer on crops and those who want to use more fertilizer because they need it to grow the crops. Do you see in the future a way to resolve that?
Well, we are certainly working. I consider that when I look at Florida right now, there are two issues that dominate agriculture. The first is that, which is we've now pitted tourism, which relies on healthy beaches and estuaries where people want to go to and not having red tides, which sometimes are exasperated by fertilizers, versus agriculture, the number 2 industry in the state. So we've got number 1 industry going head to head with the number 2 industry. A lot of it is over fertilizer use. It's not all, by the way. I mentioned septic tanks and just too many people. Industry, we're all part of the problem and we're all part of the solution, but agriculture still has to do its part. We are redefining our fertilizer rates. Farmers in Florida are required to follow IFAS recommendations. That's a law. Senate Bill 712 passed 2 years ago. So they're now required to follow our recommendations and they are audited for that. And if they don't, they get in a lot of trouble, beginning with fines, and it gets even worse from there. And we know that not all of our recommendations are right, that they are wrong. And so we're redoing them. Some might go up, some might go down, but the science is the science. And we'll make sure we have our recommendations spot on. And then at that point, it becomes a political and social issue. What does the state want? Do we want to? I've been with groups around Florida that have told me the solution to all of these water quality problems is we put farmers out of business. Well, that'll solve the problem. In fact, we'll have a lot less people then too. That solves the problem even more. But that's not realistic. We have to grow food. And as I said, we got to grow more food here in Florida. We can't grow less. We have to grow more. And if we don't, we've got social upheaval in this world. So I don't, I've got ideas in my mind of how we can navigate this really complex situation, but it's a tough one right now. It's the #1 industry versus the #2 industry, and IFAS is in the middle.
Dr. Engel, thank you so much for your talk today. I really appreciate you identifying the common ground with IFAS and everything that you all do with Rotary and Rotary International. Thinking locally, acting globally, and also acting locally is something that our organization does. I don't know if you're familiar with a group called Sustainable Cambodia. We're doing a lot of good work out there in Cambodia, and I know Richard Allen is here somewhere. That's kind of an example of some of the work that we're really proud of in this club. Rotary International, kind of talking globally, we're talking about, I think we're up to 1.4 million members now, and that's 46,000 clubs. These are clubs that foster fellowship, and our mission is to perform service globally, to advance global goodwill and peace, and to try to do it the right way. And that's why kind of two pieces to Rotary. First is service, and our Rotary motto, service above self. Then we have something called the 4-way test, which speaks to our integrity and just kind of the way that, not kind of, but the way, it's an ideal, to be clear, but it's something that we hold ourselves to in all of our dealings with each other, professionally, personally, and it's called the 4-way test. With everything we think, say, or do, we ask, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? So Dr. Engel, to thank you for your precious time today, I have our Rotary 4-way test and service above self coin for you. Thank you again for being here today. And we have our 50-50 drawing for the Rotary Reading Safari. Numbers are 411, 411. Everybody, I look forward to seeing you on Thursday at the feast. Meeting adjourned.